Everyone loved the Bronner store. It was wonderful.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, how is all this funded? I mean, is there partnerships? I mean, people volunteer their time, obviously, and I guess that's the other part of the question. How do you get these volunteers to help you? It sounds like just a tremendous amount of work organizing all this.
Yeah, well, I think, well, you know that people, when they're interested in something, they volunteer. They want people to see Americans as good people too. They want to show off their communities, their schools, their workplace. And so it's not so difficult to get people involved in that aspect. We don't have any funding here. We are totally volunteer.
My goodness.
You know, sometimes you get mileage, rare. It's a rare thing. Most of the money, it goes from the State Department to a programming agency in Washington, and then that programming agency picks out volunteer groups around the country to actually do the work. Some places have paid staff. In Detroit, actually there are three other groups like this in Michigan. We have one in Kalamazoo, one in Ann Arbor, and one in Detroit. Each of them have paid staff. Lansing, we're all volunteer.
Okay. And it's just like that for no particular reason, just no, it just comes up like that. Now the group, I want to go back to this group that came here because I think that's the best example. Because frankly, I had never been, exposed to that kind of environment where these folks are coming from other countries to learn about us. Do they generally take in time at the Michigan Capitol to try to understand legislative process, and because their governments are very different? Yeah,
they are, and I always try to put a political segment together because I think it's important for them to understand our government and how we're organized. So I usually do an overview with them, talk to them about the executive branch, the legislature, and the court system. Talk about how people are elected here. We talk about term limits. We talk about how many Republicans, how many Democrats, all of those kinds of things. They find it very interesting.
Now, what are some of the insights that they have shared with you after their experiences?
Well, for one thing, they were amazed at how open people were. They just couldn't believe it. They said, in our country, we can't always just tell people what we think about something. And they were amazed, no matter how controversial the issue was, people were willing to share with them their views. And they thought that was pretty outstanding, that would happen. They were also very appreciative that people would open their homes. And when they found out everyone was volunteering and driving them up to Birch Run on a Saturday morning, they really thought that was outstanding.
That's interesting. Now, you've had more than just this group. How many groups do you think you've had in the last, you said 6 years you've been doing this?
Oh, geez, I couldn't even count them. Already this year, we've had a number of groups. We have one coming in next week, Young Political Leaders. There are 4 people. They're from, let's see, I think we have one from Israel and one from the West Bank, so that'll be an interesting interplay. And we have a former parliament member from Tanzania in that group. The next week we have a rule of law group coming in, again from the Middle East and the North Africa. That's 16 people. But it varies. It varies by the season. And this year, a requirement is to have a campaign component in each and every.
Since it's a campaign year.
Exactly. And they, let me tell you, they are up on the issues facing our presidential candidates, and they know what's happened in South Carolina and what's happened in Kansas, and it is amazing how closely they are following the presidential campaign.
Do you believe that by doing this, it really is valuable for these individuals that come here? They learn a little bit about America, but what do they take back and what do they do with it? Have you kept in touch with any of them?
Well, we do keep in touch with some of them, and some of them have then brought Americans in to actually help with specific problems. For example, of interest to some people was a sewer overflow problem they were having in one city, and they met an expert in that area here, and then they arranged for that person to come over, and he did it free. He flew over, and it was great to see that kind of connection. In another instance, it resulted in a sister city program being formed. So I think you see a lot of that. But I think the real key is this, that it is hard for people overseas to understand Americans when they only see us through the eyes of CNN. Many of these people have never traveled in America before, and it's such a vast difference with the travels they do within their own countries that when they go back, they say, hey, don't listen to what they're saying about Americans, because they may say that they're all, only care about themselves, but when they open their homes, when they play with their kids, when they go to work, they do the same things that we do. They're faced with the same problems. So it's a very interesting thing, and I think very worthwhile.
And you said, how long has the State Department been, actively
the State
promoting
Department's
this?
Been doing this, I think 25 or 30 years.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been quite some time.
And I assume it helps relations, it
yeah,
brings
absolutely.
togetherness.
In fact, when you go and look at the former alumni of this program, you can find, well, Tony Blair was an alumni of this program.
Huh.
Yeah.
Do they get some sort of certificate or recognition when you say alumni? They just
no, but I'm sure the State Department has it all written down who's been through, and Tony Blair has been one. There are a number of leaders in West Europe. Let me see. Several in Taiwan, leaders within the party in China, Thailand,
and
all over.
And this just happens, you get a call from the State Department and they say, X amount of people are coming.
Sure.
Can you take care of them for us? That's kind of how it
Exactly.
works.
I got a call last week and they said, we want to bring someone in who is interested in state and local government. We're putting together a program. Can you handle the state government part? And I say, sure. How many people? And they'll say 8. And they're interested in tax policy. So then I will go to work putting a program together here in Lansing. Sometimes I put a university component in, have a professor, or even attend a class there, and then bring them to the legislature to talk to maybe a committee chair, or observe the legislature, or get together with some staff from the legislature, which is really important because some of these people are not yet elected officials, and it's really good for them to share staff to staff how they handle the nuances of various legislation.
Sounds like you're almost on call. I mean, they could call
you
anytime.
But we can also say no.
Oh, you can.
We can
you
say
have
no.
had to say no, obviously, I would assume.
We did. I said no for a group next week that would have overlapped with another group of 15 because as a volunteer who also has a job,
yes,
you can only take so much time.
Absolutely. So how does someone, this is obviously showing up north,
Sure.
but there's lots of people that are interested in this kind of stuff. How does someone volunteer and help out and do this?
Well, that's a good question because, as I said, there are 4 groups currently in Michigan. There aren't any. We reach the furthest north.
Lansing area.
We do. And I try to get people out a little bit. I mean, people in Washington think Lansing's a small town. And I said, you haven't seen small. Because I came from a smaller town, and there are many in the viewing area that are so small. And I try to get people out to those small towns where the mayor and 2 of the city council are having coffee down at Samuel's, at 10 in the morning, and see them, allow them to see the informal interplay between elected officials and the community at large. But for people in northern Michigan, how can you do this? I would suggest that you try to put together a chapter. And it takes a lot of work. But if you're really interested, I'm happy to talk to anyone who would like to talk about this program because I think it is so important.
And certainly Northern Michigan has a lot to offer. It's not the capital,
Absolutely.
but there's lots of
There's
good
so
local
much,
government up
because
there.
people come in and they want to talk tourism.